Hi, I'm Justin Barrett. I'm president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a psychological scientist and a former university professor. If you value this content, please like and subscribe. In this episode, I'm continuing a discussion that I started, hence the same tie, on the consumption of alcohol. What is the biblical and scientific evidence around alcohol in the Bible? And does the Bible really teach that we shouldn't drink any alcohol? Or is it more plausible that it teaches moderation and to avoid drunkenness? There are at least two prominent biblical reasons why many, I think, well-intending Christians want to teach against drinking any kind of alcohol. And they're pretty straightforward. Many people, of course, can't exercise appropriate self-control, which is considered a fruit of the Spirit in the Bible, Christian tradition. They can't exercise fruit of the Spirit if they become drunk, of course, because people use alcohol, they abuse it, they get drunk, they act the fool, which is clearly not okay. The Bible warns particularly against people in leadership positions, from kings to church elders, to be vigilant about drunkenness. They shouldn't be getting drunk, particularly in public environments or in decision-making contexts. But some folks seem to think that because alcohol consumption can lead to drunkenness, it should be avoided altogether. But notice that that's a kind of weak, slippery slope kind of argument. For instance, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, Paul tells Timothy that church leaders should not be addicted to wine, verse 3, but in the same verse says they should also be free of the love of money, which Jesus, we know, called the root of many evils. So if we must avoid all wine because you shouldn't be addicted to wine, then shouldn't we avoid all money, since you should be free of the love of money? At least have no desire for any money? I actually haven't heard that teaching yet. Not love of money, but certainly not, and for this reason we should avoid all money. That'd be just silly. The admonition here in 1 Timothy is about the excesses and addiction to alcohol. After all, this is the same letter from Paul to Timothy in which Paul recommends to Timothy that he drink some wine. A second kind of rationale for avoiding all alcohol be that drinking alcohol can negatively influence others who are not able to control themselves. So even if you can control yourself, maybe somebody else is going to be led to failing because of your consumption of alcohol. Now, a common passage of scripture used to support such an interpretation as this is Paul's letter to the Romans in chapter 14, verse 21. It is good not to eat meat or to drink wine or to do anything by which your brother stumbles. In the passage, Paul is cautioning against letting our freedoms as Christ followers to harm those in our community by leading them to violate their conscience. Of course, this is an important but tricky teaching to tune correctly. Paul himself seems to use this principle to suggest caution about when and where to eat and drink things that others may find inappropriate. But we have no evidence that Paul didn't drink wine at all or discourage others from doing so completely. See the letter to Timothy. Here again, if this is taken as evidence that we should not drink wine at all, then it's also evidence that we shouldn't eat meat at all. But I'm yet to encounter a Christian church, a college, or a seminary that forces members of their community to give up meat. Now, at this point, some of my fellow Christ followers will turn to claims that drift into that science-related realm and say, hey, that wine stuff that Jesus drank and gave his disciples was either non-alcoholic or was very, very low in alcohol. Not only, as I said, is this claim sort of silly on biblical grounds, that it was so low in alcohol, well, then it would have been hard for anybody to get drunk on it. And if that's the case, then why all these prohibitions against drunkenness? They can't get drunk because there's almost no alcohol. So that's just silly. And then, of course, there are the scientific grounds that, no, alcoholic drinks have been with us a long time. And in that ancient world, without pasteurization or refrigeration, they're almost an inevitable product of storing certain kinds of foodstuffs. Now, it's absolutely true that these alcohols would not have exceeded 15 to 20% alcohol by volume. Because to get beyond those sorts of levels, you have to introduce a distilling kind of process. That had not been invented in biblical times. What we call spirits today, they would not have been drinking. But wine, beers, things like that, mead, these would have been available in the ancient world. So Jesus drank. He shared that alcoholic drink with his followers, alcoholic wine in particular. The biblical evidence is just much too strong to deny with any kind of intellectual honesty. I think this is reason enough to support my contention that if a church or a Christian college or seminary forbids people to drink alcohol, all people to drink alcohol, even in their own homes, even in moderation, on the grounds that the Bible teaches against it, well, then that institution has no business teaching the Bible. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to talking to you next time.